Okay, hello targeted individuals, and those who are Mandela affected as well might be interested in hearing this talk. Basically, this is a personal opinion. In my opinion, I believe that the concept of labeling someone as paranoid is flawed and is at best a myth. Yeah, because if you look at the scientific evidence, yeah, and you know that espionage takes place, you know that psychological warfare takes place, yeah, then if you look at what the symptoms of paranoid schizophrenia are, somebody who describes being in an environment or situation where they're being targeted, yeah, in such a way that they find it hard to find evidence of this targeting. If somebody tells you that I'm being targeted, but I don't have any evidence to show it, we're supposed to look at them as being paranoid schizophrenic. But we also know that espionage takes place and psychological warfare. Espionage is spying. Now, the role of a spy is to make sure that you do things and you leave no evidence for anyone to find. Yeah? So, since we know that, then it's not, I'm not being political here, it's not something that's recent. If you look at the Wikipedia entrance here, because because Wikipedia, they tend to explain things simply. Some of them do become very scientific, but otherwise they like explaining things so that everyone, the layman, can understand it. So events involving espionage are well documented throughout history. The Old Testament of the Christian Bible, which is primarily based primarily on the Hebrew Bible. They speak about Joshua and Caleb and the 12 spies when entering the Promised Land. Yeah, and even Chinese, Indian, Sun Tzu, and I think that's the guy that inspired most of the military in the West as well as the East, and Chanakya will contain information on deception and subversion. Yeah, and Sun Tzu stressed the need for military intelligence. So it's been there for a couple of thousand years. If you're going back to the Old Testament, 3,000 years even. Yeah, so it's nothing new. Yeah, the role of a spy is to go into a population and be undetected and leave no evidence. Now, has anybody ever thought about what the victim of these spies go through? They won't be able to provide evidence of anything that happened to them. You could obviously, as a human being, you're like you're a mammal. I don't know if you've ever seen big cats hunt. I haven't, but I've seen documentaries of it. I've been exposed a little bit to it. So if you see them hunt, they start stalking their prey. The prey doesn't know shit, can't produce evidence, and then one of them starts making noises, like it gets spooked, like a caribou or some kind of gazelle. It gets spooked. Yeah, you might hear something, but you can't prove that there's anything there. You might have had a twig. Yeah, and it makes noise, and all the other herd members hear it, and they off. Yeah, but if the herd members will say you're being paranoid, there's no evidence. Yeah. You just heard a twig breaking in the trees. There's no evidence. You're paranoid. You're schizophrenic. Go and get treatment. Yeah. So this is where it can get a bit worrying, because if the human race was being targeted by an external force, we, the targeted individuals, and the alleged paranoia that we have, will be the only clues, because we're people who can detect when we're being monitored. Yeah, we can detect it, And with victims, if you want to keep your head straight, when they tell you you're being paranoid, yeah, unless you can rule out espionage, because countries spy on each other, governments spy on their citizens, unless you can rule this out, yeah, nobody's gonna tell me I'm being paranoid unless I've ruled this out. Yeah, if I haven't ruled that out. And then you know that one of the techniques that people who involve themselves in espionage use is psychological warfare. Psychological warfare has been there since prehistoric times. This is where you try and spook your opponent. Yeah, and look, since prehistoric times, warlords and chiefs have recognized the importance of inducing psychological terror in opponents. Facing armies will shout, howl insults at each other, and beat weapons together or on shields prior to the engagement. Like the invention of that sign. Yeah, I think it was probably 100 years war or before that, where France was fighting Britain, and the French used to capture the Brits and cut off their middle fingers. So in defiance, they would show them the middle finger to say, I've still got my middle finger. It was something like that, right? So that was all psychological. Yeah, so they would tell them, right? So it was not derogatory. It was actually something that the people needed to gain a psychological edge over their opponents during war, to show them the fuck you sign. yeah. It's very old. It's not recent. It's not modern. So psychological warfare is there, where the people who are doing espionage will try and terrorize the population as a way of gaining an advantage for their nation or for their organization. Yeah. So when we know that all this is true, how could somebody come along and tell me when you believe you're being watched, you're being paranoid? Yeah. For all you know, I could be trying to alert you to some major developments here. I don't know. Like I'm like a caribou in a herd of caribous. I've just had a twig. I don't know. Yeah. But I know that something ain't right. Something spooked me. Right? That's what targeted individuals are. Now the Mandela Effect people, they are noticing this on a very, very large scale, where they are seeing nationwide or state level, yeah, changes. Yeah. Where maybe the espionage or psychological warfare has gotten to a point where we're starting to see things on a global scale, changes on a global scale. Yeah. So that's what the Mandela Effect is. I do believe that they're also victims of espionage and psychological warfare that's gotten out of hand. They've got a lot of things to use out there, and it's gotten out of hand. So you keep a level head. You don't. I mean, there's a lot of people who like to classify targeted individuals as crazy, but when all this is happening, don't be too quick to dismiss it. Yeah. That, like, the reason I like watching targeted individual videos, I also consider my responsibility as a citizen, because somebody might be talking about a subject and you think they're just being crazy. Yeah. And then when you start to think about things logically in terms of what really happens in real life, yeah, you might say, hang on a minute, this targeted individual might have inadvertently revealed a subversive program that's taking place. Yeah. And which is another reason why you targeted individuals needs to be careful. I know you like recording perpetrators, but please be aware that there are people who are getting on with their lives. Yeah, espionage is a part of life. You might have gangsters out there who are busy doing their thing, and they act shady. They act like the perpetrators because they are, but not against you, unless you got something they want to nick. So it might just be that. So mind when you record people, you might be revealing people's how do you call it? Extracurricular life, if you like. People's private life. Yeah. So they are people who involve themselves in espionage and psychological warfare for other reasons, for drug dealing, for selling human beings. You might be getting yourself caught up in these realms, these worlds, and then you'll be targeted because you've revealed information about these people. So be careful when you record evidence of perpetrators. Be careful. Look at the video first and eliminate these things. You don't want to get caught up in anything that will be the reason why you got targeted. So if you do record a perpetrator and then you think about it and say, hang on a minute, this one might be involving himself in some shady business other than my own, other than, you know, and other than targeting me. You don't show that. You don't broadcast that. Yeah, because now you might have revealed a real program of espionage that will come back to bite you real hard. Yeah, so you want to concentrate on people who are making eye contact with you. Then you can use that in a defensive way, where you say, you can even produce that as evidence. Look, this one is harassing me because they keep staring at me. Yeah. But if these people are like gangsters or politicians or whatever, and they're going about their business, they might be acting shady, but be careful. This is life, you know. People in life are like that, you know. And it goes back thousands of years. Thousands of years. I don't want to see targeted individuals getting caught up in things that you use your mind, use your brain, and know to avoid. Yeah, you don't want to tip the balance either way. You don't want to tip the balance towards the gangsters. You don't want to tip the balance towards the government, because they're all gangsters. So you just want to, don't ruffle any feathers. And if you listen to the teachings of Christ, you don't involve yourself in that. Christ never involved himself in raising armies against the Roman occupation, did he? No, you don't involve yourself in that unless you're willing to do that. Yeah, and unless you're willing to go out there and raise armies and defend yourself, you just stay out of people's way. They're doing each other. Yeah, they're victimizing each other. You just make sure you're not a victim. If they start targeting you, that's when you need to broadcast it. Yeah, but you must have clear evidence that is directed at you. Yeah, Christ says, turn the other cheek. If someone accidentally looks at you, you bear in mind that somebody looked at you. But if they don't keep doing it, then that was just accidental. Yeah. But if somebody looks at you and immediately say that's a perp, no. You wait until they do it 2 or 3 times. Yeah. Then you're like, okay, now I'm pretty sure there's something going on, right? Something directed towards me. But if it's not directed towards you, stay out of people's business. And you see, I'm a preacher. I started my own denomination. Well, it's not really a denomination. I started my own temple to God. Yeah, well, to the Creator. So, but it's like, I can't go into other people's churches. Yeah, because I'm a targeted individual. People are naturally drawn towards me, and the only people that go to church are people who have sinned and are going there for their to repent, or they recognize that they've sinned and they need to connect with God. So those are sinners that go to church. Those are people that will be remote viewing you and targeting your mind when they're outside of church. So when you go to church, they'll stop praying and they'll concentrate on what they do outside church. Yeah. And another thing, if people start targeting me, I start playing with them. Yeah. Most people who target you have their IQs are low, because the people who control them will never be seen doing that. Espionage, you believe in too much evidence if you're caught targeting someone. So the people who really behind it don't want to get seen. They'll get somebody with a lower IQ, yeah, to agree to target you. So, because if that one gets caught, at least the main head of the snake hasn't been caught. So those are normally people with low IQs. Yeah, relatively speaking. Let's say they're not as low as you think. So if you have a low IQ yourself and you're being targeted, then you're fucked. But my IQ is healthy. I would say it's 120 to 140. I'm not quite a genius, but just below it. Yeah. So most people I find that do the targeting, their IQ tends to be around 100. Yeah. There's people who are walking around with 85, 75 IQs. Yeah. So these people tend to be cleverer on average. So it's cleverer than most of the people they target. But in my case, my IQ is 120, 140. I'm cleverer than most of the people who target me. So as soon as I see someone targeting me, they're a mammal. I don't know if you've ever seen a cat and you said, look, yeah, and it looks that way. Yeah, every mammal does that. You can distract them. You can treat someone like a mammal. Yeah, and then if it gets psychological, obviously I'm more intelligent than them. I can do reverse psychology, and when I talk to myself and I try to nullify what they're trying to do to my critical layer and my subconscious, because I know that when they torture your mind, they're trying to get you to change your reasoning. So I always reinforce my beliefs. I choose my beliefs. I say, right, I'm gonna be a straight Jesus follower that supports this team and so forth. And whenever that's challenged, I reinforce those beliefs. So I stay away from anything that is promoting or includes subliminals that promote an idea that's against what I chose to believe in. So as soon as I start to feel in such a way and it touches on something that I chose to believe in, I start talking to myself, yeah, and I know that my subconscious is listening to what I'm saying. I start talking to myself in order to nullify what other people are doing to it. Other people are manipulating my emotions to try and get me to change my feelings, and I start talking in such a way, tangential to what they're doing, and I start talking in such a way as to bring my consciousness and my critical layer back to where I want it to be. Yeah. So when someone does target you, you need to the best way is just to inform everyone, so you need to record that and broadcast that. But if somebody's just getting along with everyday conspiracies that don't concern you, leave that be. Yeah, that's got nothing to do with you. They're not interested in being, perpetrators for silly things. They want hard cash, drugs, money, women. These are the things that they're into. They're not. It's not you. You're broke as fuck. Yeah, they wouldn't want anything to do with you. Yeah, so you got to eliminate the espionage that happens because people are getting on with their life. I think knowledge is power for both of us, both of those communities, targeted individuals and the Mandela Effect community as well. Yeah, you're not going crazy. It's part of life. Espionage and psychological warfare is part of life, and you're just somebody who's sensed it as a mammal. You've sensed it, and you need to eliminate this, but you need to stay away from it. Yeah, you need to eliminate espionage or psychological warfare without actually knowing, because once they see that you've seen them, then that's the reason why you got targeting. So you need to really do some serious thinking and then figure out whether it is, and if it is, then you just have to figure out the best way of keeping out of it. When I first started being a targeted individual, it was like I said, there's a history to figure out why these programs started. You can even go back to the Bible and find characters. It was already happening. Yeah, so when we were born in these days, it had already been happening for 3,000 years. So every human being is born, and you have family and friends who are targeting you. The first espionage you get involved in is your parents' squabbles. Yeah. Now, if you noticed, when people competing in society, people go to hate each other. Your parents will acquire enemies, and sometimes their enemies hate their picnic, their children, and so forth. So the first espionage you're brought into is their struggles, where their enemies will hate you by association. So you become a target already when you're just being born. Every human being on the planet, when they're born, their parents' enemies automatically start to hate you. So you start getting funny looks from people because of those. No more espionage, man. It's normal. You're not being paranoid. It's normal. Yeah, it shouldn't be like that in a utopian world. It shouldn't be like that, but that's what it is. That's how it is. Yeah. So my espionage started off early. I don't know if it was due to my relatives' squabbles being on me. I don't know, whatever it was. I didn't really want to go deep into describing it, but it started off that way. But because it was personal, yeah, it, and this is another thing you got to realize: if it's family or friends based, it shouldn't be that big. It's as simple as moving out of a city. Sometimes it's as simple as going to the next block of houses. Yeah, yeah, to get away from the targeting. Yeah, most people who perpetrators at a lower level, yeah, they can't leave their own street or even area. So it's normally localized. You could just move to another area. So I found that even when I did, whatever was harassing me was really determined. So I had to invent this musical persona, which eventually became something I use to treat my mental well-being, my psychological well-being. So I invented a couple of artistic personas. I had to stay in the public eye. Yeah, we didn't really have smartphones in 1998. I think the first smartphone started in 99, 2000, I think. So we didn't really have the concept of recording people and sharing it online as yet. There were some people who had smartphones, yeah, already, but it didn't really become something that I was into until like 2001, 2002, or whatever. Yeah. So when it first started, I knew it had something to do with me personally, but I didn't know where it was coming from. I knew that obviously whoever people see you with, by association, they'll start hating you. So that existed. Yeah. But I kept changing. I changed location, but it kept being something that was persistent. Yeah. So I said, okay, I have to stay in the public eye just in case I was involved in espionage, but somebody made a mistake and mistook me for something. So I had to go and perform on stage. I'm not, I've since then become artistic. Yeah. But when I first started, I wasn't good at music. But I still felt the need to go and perform just to make sure people have seen me as I'm doing psychological warfare on those who are doing psychological warfare on me. Just to get them to think that I'm a public figure. I'm somebody that everybody's seen and people know and they'll miss. But if you're somebody who's isolated, yeah, you become an easier target for spying and things like that. I thought it was that because I'm thinking if I move to different location, the only way I could still feel like a victim of espionage is if what's hunting me is following me about. Yeah, so I started performing on stage when I didn't even know how to do music. I started writing my own music. Then I realized I was really being a target. So there was once I was in a situation where I had to cut a CD, but every CD shop I went to, you could even see them serving another person, and then when they come to me, they said, "No, the CD, but we used to use CD burners. The CD burner's broken." Yeah, and you're like, okay. So it's like as if somebody reached them and told them, "Don't do business with this guy." So I said, "Okay, I got to run my own music. I got to really get laptops that can burn CDs properly." And so I go that far back, yeah, in terms of my music career. So I had to do my own music, write my own lyrics, and perform my own stuff. But I wasn't really a musician. I was just doing it to distract those who were targeting me because I didn't understand how they can get that much support, yeah, to reach me. Yeah, so I had to deter them by making them, when you're a public figure and you live out in the open, yeah, those who do espionage on you stand a better chance of being seen if you're out in the open. But I'm not saying being out in the open when you're mixing with the people who you're with. Just being out in the open, being seen with people. Don't emotionally or intellectually, yeah, connect to members of the public if you're a targeted individual. Because another operation would be to see who you're talking with and target those as a way of getting to you. So you emotionally become detached. Yeah. Where you sit there, you can smile with people, you can talk with people, but don't emotionally get attached to them. Yeah, and start to love them or anything like that. You must be cold at all times if you become targeted. Yeah. You must become like the animal that's hunting you. You must become cold as well. Yeah, because the person you love most will be the one that they get to betray you. Jesus teaches that to us all the time. That's what the story of Judas is about. The closest people to you are the ones Satan will target, or the evil one will target. Yeah? So even when they see you with people, don't be close to those. Yeah? So these were fighting techniques, but I thought, and I still do, think that I was a victim of some kind of espionage, whether it was directed towards the people who was family and friend, and I got caught up in that, or whether it was at a higher level. But it still boils down to espionage. When I try to ask, because I was a very young kid, when I try to ask psychiatrists and people like that, why am I feeling like I'm targeted? They started to suggest that I might be paranoid. Yeah. So I said, okay then, they're acting like these things don't happen. Yeah. Then they'll ask you, did you get any evidence? And you say, well, obviously I'm not gonna get evidence if they're doing that, am I? Yeah. So anyway, I left that and I said, well, whatever it is that's happening, it's happening. You got to deal with it. You never know what's happening. If they're good at their job, you won't see nothing. But cracks started to appear and you started to see things, and that people started seeing the Mandela effect. All I'm saying is just be careful out there. Know that espionage does take place. Know the reasons for espionage and don't get caught up in anything stupid. Thank you.